Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 5 Tips and Tricks for Careers in Athletics. I am your host, Dr. Maury Mosovitz, joined by my favorite all-time best, most wonderful co-host, Jen Albanese. Welcome, Jen.
Hello, Maury. Welcome, everyone, to the podcast.
I
How's
know.
everybody doing? Another podcast. How you
Another
doing,
podcast.
sir?
Good episodes. Doing
Yes.
well. Still getting over our movie-going review experience from today.
Oh, my gosh. All right. Let's set the stage, and then we'll talk about it. Go ahead.
So we were talking, there was something about Jen and I's age that came involved, and we were talking about movies related to a period of time in our lives, and the movie Titanic got brought up, and someone said they didn't know what it was, and Jen lost it.
I'm appalled. Like, now, if you know me, if anyone who's listening knows me, Titanic is like literally my all-time favorite movie. If I had to like rank best movies that I've ever seen in my life, Titanic is like top 3, like one of the best movies ever. And I was like, what do you mean you've never seen Titanic? And they were like, no, we've never seen it. It's so long. It's such a long movie. Didn't it have like an intermission? And I'm like, first of all, no. Where intermission? What does that even question? No. Secondly, it is long, but it was phenomenal. Okay. Won the Oscar that year for Best Picture. All right.
It's crazy because the person we were talking to were in their 20s, and they were like, oh,
Yeah.
it's so old. So it's like,
It's such an old movie. So what did it come out? What, 1997?
I don't know. I didn't look it up.
So 1998, something like that. And I was in like 7th grade in junior high. And me and my friends were obsessed with it because obviously we love Leonardo DiCaprio. And I'm not even kidding. I think I saw it in the theater maybe 20, 30 times.
Are you kidding?
Yeah, swear to God, no.
You went to the theater 20, 30 times?
20 or 30 times, yes, without a doubt. Because I went like the first time, obviously, and then we had to go see it like I'd have to go with my dad. I went with my mom. I went with my grandma. I went with this friend group.
I have a story about Titanic that I think is a little bit psychotic, but this is a whole nother like layer of it.
See, I'm like psychotic on one side. Go ahead, Maury. Tell them your Titanic story.
So I think the interesting thing about my experience with Titanic was that I went to see my parents took me to see Titanic around the same time that my grandmother passed away. And I guess that shouldn't have had an influence on us going to see Titanic, but it clearly affected me because we went to see it, and like a couple of nights later, my father hears that someone opened the front door to our house, and he's like out to go figure out like who's breaking into the house, and he goes down and looks down, from the second floor to our front door. And I guess I was standing there with the door open, like in the middle of the night. And he's like, what are you trying to do? So anyone that has seen Titanic, there is a scene with older people that are like stuck in the ship, and as it's going down, and they're hugging each other, and they're basically about to die. And I told my father I was letting the old people out because I was trying to save them from dying in the ship as I was sleepwalking. So that is my experience with Titanic, which has its own psychological issues.
Yes, correct.
But clearly Jen has more psychological issues for seeing it 20 or 30 times. Like that's
in the theater. And then obviously when it like came out like on like VHS, I would watch it like once a week. I was like obsessed
oh my
with the
God.
Like I can like recite lines to you. Like me and my friends used to write notes to each other back in the day in high school. And we would like start like the note with like a quote from the movie. Like never let go, like that would be the quote. And then we would like write a note. So yeah, Titanic up there, like best movie ever, like huge influence on my life. And the funny part is, Maury, you love cruises, and I've never been on a cruise. So
see, that's probably why, because you're afraid the ship's going to go down. I just like kind of put it out of my mind after that. So like
But you were trying to save the old people.
I was trying to save the old people. Now, I mean, it's older people, and my grandmother just died. Like clearly there's a connection.
Clearly there was some trauma there.
There was trauma. There's trauma. It makes about sense if you get to know my family.
Seriously though, if you have not seen Titanic, how in the world you need?
Yes, that staff member that we know, we have now told them. I don't think he's still going to watch it, but we've tried to tell him to see it.
You still need to see Titanic. It is a phenomenal movie. So.
And with all that, I know everyone who's interested in athletics is clearly also interested in the movie Titanic. So
or
we
they've
will.
turned this off at this point, so.
We've just phased all of our podcast listeners out under this discussion, but hopefully you stick around and hear from our next great guest. And it has nothing to do with Titanic, which is wonderful for you. And we will see everyone after this break. If you're enjoying this podcast, please follow us on your favorite podcast streaming service. The 5 Tips and Tricks podcast is a part of Athletic Career Consulting, a group focused on educating and guiding high school and college students looking towards careers in athletics. To find out more, go to our website at www.athcareer.com. That's ATHCAREER.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Maury, would you like to introduce our guest today?
Absolutely. With over 20 years of experience in coaching and education, today's guest has dedicated her career to fostering a culture of excellence in athletics, positively impacting young individuals along the way. A former teacher with a bachelor's degree in elementary education from Loyola College, she was recognized with awards such as the Sallie Mae First Class Teacher Award and the WVEC-TV Teacher of the Year early in her career. She is committed to developing young athletes matched by her dedication to professional development for coaches. Having implemented programs based on the Positive Coaching Alliance model, her excellence in coaching earned her induction into the South Florida chapter of the U.S. Lacrosse Hall of Fame in 2011. Currently serving as the athletic director of St. Edward's School in Vero Beach, Florida, she oversees 24 upper school teams and 12 middle school teams. Previously, she was a senior women's administrator and associate athletic director at Pinecrest Preparatory School, where she also led the girls lacrosse program. Under her guidance, the program achieved multiple district championships and produced numerous U.S. lacrosse All-Americans. Please join me in welcoming Eileen Pliske. Welcome, Eileen. Hope I said the last name right.
It's close. It's Pliske, but close.
Pliske. I was close.
Yeah.
I was close.
I should have done that in the preview.
I should have made sure. I thought I had it right. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We're really excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. This is really exciting. I love podcasts. I love listening to podcasts, but this is my first ever being a guest on one. So,
well, it's very easy. You don't have to worry.
Thanks.
We're excited to chat with you. So again, thanks for taking the time to talk with us today. This is great. So,
and your experience coming through. So being a coach and leading into administration and wanting to get involved with just getting people into the world of athletics. That's all about what the podcast is about. So we're really interested to hear what you have, especially for those people out there that might want to be a coach or want to be involved with high school athletics or primary athletics. It's something that we really want people to learn about and hear your insight.
Okay, great. I think I can offer some tips. I hope so.
Well, awesome. Well, let's get going with the first one then.
Okay. Well, I made some notes, but as I'm listening to you brought me back, going back into the 90s with my resume. So it's kind of interesting to hear where it all started. And this actually isn't one of the notes that I wrote down, but I think one thing that really did help me was being trained as an educator and being in the classroom first, because and through the years, I kind of evolved into telling the coaches that, either I work with or worked, under me that, we are about teaching and just in a different setting. So our classrooms are the fields, the courts, the pools, and all the stuff that we learn in being an educator applies to being a coach. So classroom management, I'm huge on classroom management, and that's just about, maintaining your kids in discipline and structure and the things that they need to be successful. That's one of the things that really has applied, I think, from just being a trained educator. And I know all the coaches I worked with at my previous job and the ones here would agree that being in the classroom does really translate so well to athletics.
Do all the coaches that you work with are also teachers, or do you sometimes bring in people that might not have a teaching background that might be a part of the coaching staff? Like, how do you balance all of that?
That's tricky as an athletic director. I tell you, in this seat, you really would love to have teacher coaches and have everybody, on your staff full time, because that makes such a difference, having the kids being able to see their teachers in a different role.
Yeah.
And vice versa, having the coaches see their kids and the teachers seeing their kids in a different role outside of the classroom. The reality is it's not that easy anymore to have,
Right.
there's so much time involved in coaching that, if somebody's at school from 7 o'clock in the morning and then, you want them on the field from 4 to 6 and
Right.
then games and travel, it's a tough sell,
Right.
unfortunately, these days. So we are fortunate at St. Ed's to have a lot of teachers that are willing to do that and help us, and are great at both. So and at Pinecrest the same. We had a lot of educators that were dual threats, I'll call them. So it was kind of nice. But we do also bring in off-campus coaches, which can be a little bit tricky at times. But once they get the idea and understand the culture of the school and the mission of the school, which
Yeah.
is one of the first things I talk about in my coaches meeting in the beginning of the year, is what the school's mission is. You can't just, it's not, rec league or anything else. It's you're there as a representative of the school. So that's a big message to get to our coaches, whether they be on campus or off campus.
Well, that's great. And that's great for someone. So if someone wants to get involved with coaching and might not be a teacher right now, how would you recommend them make those connections?
Really put yourself out there, kind of, look at, obviously some schools will post things on their website and stuff, but being in the community, if you're a rec league coach or a club coach, and you want to get involved in, the relationships of high school students, it's great to put your name out there with other people that are connected to a school, and kind of know that you're always on display. Like if I'm at a game, I'm watching my coaches, but I'm also watching the other team's coaches, and a lot of times that's where you find great people, and also find people that you're like, I don't want that person on my staff. So whether you're in the community coaching, I think, and you want to get your feet wet with that, it's important to know that you're really always on display, not only for the kids, but for people that you might want to advance your career with.
Yeah. That's a good tip, because
that's
even
really good point. Yeah.
Even in the college world where we're looking for coaches and they might be assistants somewhere else, and you're like, oh, I don't really think we might want that person here. Like that's such a key thing about trying to make connections and be involved. So this is awesome. Thank you so much. I think we got like a tip and a half out of you out of this one.
I can keep rolling with that.
That was great.
So what do we got for number 2?
All right, so a little bit on the boring side, but when you're an AD, you have to plan ahead. So long term and short term. So long term is looking ahead for seasons. If I'm in the fall season, I have to look ahead to winter and spring. I can't just exist in the time. You can't exist in the now when you're an athletic director all the time. So just for things, needs, equipment needs, uniforms, do you have everything? You have to be organized and look ahead. But also short-term wise, when you have game day, that's a big part of the job is prepping and getting everybody, the clocks and the consoles out to the field and the cash boxes and all that stuff. What I learned, really what I thought about this year when my running around the campus and trying to set up on game days was, I learned the most from waiting tables, because I maximized my steps when I waited tables. I was like, okay, if I'm taking this tray out, I can serve this to this table and that to that. How many things can I take at once?
Multitasking. Right?
Multitasking. Yeah, absolutely. And so I would just like this. It feels like a lot like waiting tables again. But I would think I'm going to go here first. I'm going to take these 3 things that are going to this field, and then I can come back and get this for that field or that gym. So I think the planning ahead and always thinking ahead is one of the things that is a big tip. For you can't wing it. You got to really think about it when you're setting up for either that day or the future. So
yeah, I feel like that. Yeah, I feel like that's across everything, is planning ahead, and it's not boring. That's such a good thing for people to remember, because you can only be successful if you're planning ahead and you are kind of that one step ahead, so that you're not scrambling. And on game day, I mean, I understand that, from running around on game day too, from every aspect of making sure things are organized and planning ahead, and so you're not scrambling on game day. So that's a really good. That's not a boring one at all.
Okay, good.
That was great.
Honestly, it gives me some PTSD thinking about multiple games on the same day. It's like, oh God, you're always trying to figure out, okay, how do I get these 3 things in? And luckily I'm one of the people that help deal with the schedule. So we try not to overload things on the same day, but sometimes it's unavoidable, and in 10 different places at the same time. I think this weekend I know on our staff, we had, I think 3 different events going all at the same time that just couldn't be avoided. And
Right.
it's like, how are you going to make that all work? And I love the waiting tables example, because that's like just something that so many of us can relate to. It's like, how do you get everywhere and make sure that you're not wasting any second of it?
Yeah, that's, you learn to be efficient that way. It was such a great, it's one of the best things I think I've ever did in my career. So that was good to get through college.
So if you want to be in athletics, be a waiter or waitress.
Exactly. Yeah, wait some tables. Exactly. Yeah, do something in service industry, that's for sure, because you are definitely, getting, serving a lot of people at one time. So
and it humbles you to make you think about other people too, because if those people are waiting for you or you're dealing, like it makes it very quickly understand things.
We are definitely in the customer service industry, that's for sure.
I was just going to say, that's our business. No matter what level you're doing it, it's customer service. So.
That's right.
Okay, wait tables, everybody.
All you high schoolers out there, go straight to your local restaurants. I'm sure they would appreciate it.
I'm telling you. And you can make some good money too.
Good money.
So true, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great tip. Let's go on to number 3.
Okay, number 3, be visible, and that's, look, being an athletic director, you have to be at the events, and honestly, it's the best part of the job. Watching the kids participate in sports. I remember at my previous job, and this is years ago, when I kind of first started getting into the admin part of game day operations, where I was kind of in charge of the event. I was watching a soccer game with one of the dads, standing up in the stands, and he was in finance, so his schedule was totally different than mine. But he just turned to me, he said, "You have the best job," and I'm like, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, you get to watch sports all the time," and I'm like, "You know what? You're right. This is awesome," and it really is the best way to enjoy the kids in a different way, and to see their successes and their failures. I tell them all the time, I said, "Guys, you think that we're just watching the highlight reels. I'm watching what you do in moments when you're not successful. And do you put your, we call it palms up. That comes from Coach Harris from back at Pinecrest. He would always call it palms up. Do you raise your hands and put your palms up when you don't get the call, or somebody doesn't give you a good pass, or do you just go to the next play?" So you're always on display. There's so many things to learn about a kid's personality and coach's personality at games, and you have to go. So just being visible and which, like, that's not the hard part. It makes long days, but so I think some people try to get out of that maybe, or think, "Oh, I don't have to go to that event." And you should. It makes a difference when they notice when you're there. And they notice when you're not there. So,
So a good thing is, but how do you schedule all that? How do you make yourself available to get to all that? Like, when you're thinking about it, how do you deal with those, trying to make sure that you're present at all those different spaces?
Well, it depends on, home events take priority, obviously, because we're in charge of them. Yeah. So if we have a couple of multiple events, then I have to split a little bit. So either I'll start at one and go to another. But since we're a smaller school, we're fortunate that it usually is the middle school events are before the varsity events. So I kind of just like float from one to the next as the time progresses. If we're ever, having multiple events at one time, then I'll start at one and make sure it's running. And then if I'm not running a clock or doing something that I can't move, if I leave, that's a problem. Or I'll see our associate athletic director. One of our associate athletic directors is also our trainer, so he's at a lot of events. And then I have another associate athletic director that also helps me cover events, and he's like the voice of our school. So it's pretty cool. So we can kind of share it a little bit, but I'm always at something. So this week we have football away. Got to go to. I'll go down to that game in 2 hours away, but it's great. It's fun. So yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, just that balance of like having people you can trust that can help you cover if you're not there, but trying to make your presence known and be around. I think it makes all the difference. I know a lot of students I see know how important it is that like their administration or the people that are part of their community are there to support them. So it's so great that you're that's a dedicated part. And I think people sometimes forget about that part.
They
like
do.
Like you said, they notice when you're there and they notice when you're not there. So I think that that's a good point too. Like you may think, oh, you're kind of just standing in the background or you're standing up in the stands. Like they see when the people are there that matter to them, whether it's an administrator, like you said, Maury, or if it's a family member, or if it's, a teacher that they, really that has an impact on them. That makes a difference to those student athletes. So I think that's a really important one. I love that one.
Very true.
Yeah.
Okay, Jen, keep me on track. We are number 4.
We are on number 4.
Okay.
We are rolling right along.
Okay, I'm rolling. And that number 3 kind of rolls into number 4, so that's a good thing. To me, it's about the relationships, and it's the relationships with the kids, the students, the parents, and then your faculty and staff. So with students, for example, like going back to being visible, when you're at the games, you're going to have to interact with them. Like I do things like I'm at the car line every morning. I don't have to be, but that's truly where I get my energy, is going and watching these kids come out of the car and greeting them every morning. And just, and if they had a game, I could say something to them then about that. Yeah. And whatever play I observed, or, good, bad, or whatever, we talk about it. So those relationships with the kids make such a difference. So it kind of goes hand in hand with being visible, but actually finding other ways, not just the games, to find them, to connect with them, to ask about things other than sports, their families. Just about building and creating a relationship with the student athletes is, to me, huge. And then with parents, the parents can be, people think they're the enemies all the time.
Well, I was going to be one of my questions I was going to ask you, because I've talked to a lot of coaches in high school that are kind of nervous about being coaches because they're afraid of parents' reactions or how things are going to be taken, or scrutiny. So that I think that's a huge thing for people that are thinking about being in administration in high school or in coaching.
Yeah. And I think you have to be approachable, right? I mean, it's not always going to be, sunshine and cupcakes and rainbows and stuff, but having that, if you have an initial, established relationships with the parents. The first day I was at school last July, when I got this job, there was a boy that was outside throwing a lacrosse ball against the building. And I'm like, in the middle of July, and I'm like, it's so hot, in Florida. And I'm like, who is that outside? And I thought it was great. I'm like, he wasn't hitting any windows or anything. So I went down there, I opened the door, and I started talking to him. And I just asked him a question. I'm like, first of all, aren't you hot? It's July. And he's like, and then he said, who are you? And I said, I introduced myself. And he, you're the new athletic director. He took off his glove and he came over, shook my hand. And I'm like, this is my first interaction with one of the kids, student athletes at St. Ed's. And I'm like, this is awesome. So I emailed the parents and just said, listen, I didn't know him. But I reached out to them to say, this is what just happened. And it really, it was great. I thought he was so polite and, looked me in the eye, shook my hand, and it was a great interaction I wanted to share with them. And the mom, she had one of the best replies I've ever had. Was her response was, thanks for Beckley's get out of jail free card. I was like, so right away we had a banter going. It was such a great reaction. But again, it's about that relationship, and not only with the kid, but extended to the parents, because parents, we like to hear the good things about our kids, right? And a lot of times when the school calls or there's problems, you hear the bad. So I'm a very positive person. I try to be that way in pretty much everything I do. Not that I can't get cynical, because I can, but it's tough. And being positive takes a lot of energy and effort. It's not something that happens naturally, I think, unfortunately. So anyway, the interaction with that family started, and then the good reception on the other end, it makes you want to do it more. Like, okay, if I can see kids do things well, catch them doing good, and let the parents know they appreciate that. So that helps build that foundation. So it's easier to have conversations about, anything. And not that it's all great, but it does help the relationships for sure.
So you're saying when that parent calls and asks about playing time, it's a lot easier to talk about it.
It is. Well, it is. But one thing, we don't talk about playing time. That's one of our rules and our parent rules. Is, that's up to the coaches, But yeah, you just kind of break the ice and you say, okay, it gives you some good foundation with the relationships that you need to maintain. These are our clientele, our customers. It's their kids they're passionate about their children, and they should be. And they're passionate about, the people that are in charge of them and taking care of them. So we have to, respect that. So.
Well, I think you took the edge off a lot of people that might be afraid of jumping into coaching or administration, because that's the one I hear all the time is, I'm afraid of what the parents are going to say or what the reaction is going to be, or you hear these stories.
But I think what you said about like kind of starting and building the foundation of that relationship right off the bat just makes for a positive experience along the way. There's obviously going to be hard conversations.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's saying there isn't going to be hard conversations, but if you already have developed that relationship where the parent trusts you, where they have a good feeling about you, a good experience with you, like it's going to be easier to have those more difficult conversations if those relationships are there. And that's not only in coaching, but across athletics. I feel like you said, you mentioned with your staff, with other outside entities that you're working with, like those relationships help you be successful in whatever you're trying to do. Mm-hmm. So I love when people say that. We've said it a couple of times on the podcast, but I love it in this setting because it helps with that on that coaching side of things. But relationships are so important. So
it does. That even goes back to teaching too, because when you're having a parent-teacher conference, you start with the good. We love having little Johnny in class, but and give something positive so the parents can relax a little bit, and then you kind of you put a little bit of put a little bit of yucky in between, and then you bring it back with something nice at the end. So it's that sandwich, that sweetness sandwich that you have to have. So but it does help to always leave with something positive. So yeah, and you're right with the staff too, the same thing. And we have to know names. That's another thing I said in my relationships is like, I happen to be, for whatever reason, very good with names, but learning the names of the student athletes as quickly as possible, kids you're coaching. I mean, sometimes I was watching coaches in action and they didn't know the kids' names after, a couple of days. And I'm like, ooh, we really that's a big one. You got to know that. And I think that works with, administration too. Know people on the campus, get to know, everybody, facilities, cafeteria, so that you can, everybody works together. You can't do this by yourself. So.
Yeah. Awesome. These were great. This was great. Okay, Jen. So bring it on home with the last one.
So the last big one. So Eileen, what do you know now that you wish you knew then? So what do you know now at this point in your career that you wish you knew at the start of it?
It's an interesting question, because I'm like, it can so easily go negative, but I don't want it to, because like time is the obvious one. It's like, it's just a lot of time. I happen to be in a perfect point in my life. My kids are all out of college, and we're empty nesters. I have a dog at home. We're good. But so it's a lot of time, but that's true. But I think really what I learned throughout my whole career from coaching to administration and athletics is you kind of learn to redefine your definition of success. So success is not. I have no idea what my coaching record was. Winning. I always hated that question every year. I'd have to go look it up. And what was my win-loss record last year? I'm like, I don't know. Don't care. It's not about that. For me, it's about it's all about the experience that the kids have, and that's what you hear about. When you're doing it long enough, the players that you keep in touch with, and hopefully the coaches that you keep in touch with, it's about how you made them feel, and the experience that they had. So I'm not all about, records and, championships and everything else. I like them. I like to win, I'm competitive as anybody else.
Right.
And I've been fortunate enough to have, a successful, coaching career when it comes to numbers, but when it comes to relationships and experiences, that making it, I've had my turn. I tell the kids that all the time. I tell the coaches that, I've done that. It's their turn to have the experience. So we have to make it about them, and do it the best way we know how. So just kind of evolving your definition of success is what I've come to realize. So
that's awesome. I feel like a lot of times when you take that approach, it leads to success. Like it leads to those championships or kids being like scorers. And like, I can think back on my college time or my high school time, and I've thought the programs that just put in that effort and it was about that culture and that team we're so much more successful than those that just looked at the numbers straight up. And
Mm-hmm.
it just makes all the difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does. I mean, through my coaching, we always had a theme every year, and it was just, and that really came from the experience of the girls, and it kind of rolled over into each year. But it was like an unveiling of the theme. Everybody was all, what's it going to be this year? And they always had meaning. And well, actually, one of my favorite ones was that I took from the musical Wicked, which is for good, and we had that in the back of the shirts,
One of my
and
favorite songs.
right, I know, but
It's
it's
so good.
because I knew you, I've been changed for good, and that's what it was about, or the culture of my team when I was coaching, and it was about impacting others in a positive way, so that you make the world a better place, really. So, and you learn so much with sports. It's not even funny. It's the best platform to learn how to be a better person, and just make everybody around you better, and how to fail, all that stuff. There's so
Yeah.
many things wrapped up in one. So athletics are fantastic. It's such a great job. It really is. So
Well, we're going to put that as an endorsement across the podcast. So make sure everyone knows how great it is to be in athletics.
it is.
We can't thank you enough for doing this with us. We're so glad to have you join us and give your experience. And I know so many people are going to take away a lot of great information from this. So thank you for your time.
No problem. Thank you. This was so much fun.
Yeah, it was great. Like you said about the impact. Now, hopefully that's what we try to do with the podcast, is make that impact on people to want to be in a career like this and have an impact on others. So it was great. It was such a good conversation. So thank you so much. This was great.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Good luck with the rest of your sporting season,
Thank
Jen.
you.
Yes.
Give out all our socials, everything for our fans out there.
Yes. So make sure everybody's following us on all your social and podcast platforms to see all of our new episode drops every Tuesday. And then again, on our socials, it's at @AthCareerPod on X and Instagram and TikTok and Facebook and LinkedIn and everything everywhere. So make sure you're following and liking us so you can keep up with everything that we're doing. So it's been really fun. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody. We'll see everyone soon.
Bye.
If you like the 5 Tips and Tricks podcast, make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. You can rate and review us, including questions that may be answered on future episodes. The 5 Tips and Tricks podcast for careers in athletics is part of Athletic Career Consulting. Check us out at www.athcareer.com. Don't forget to follow and like us on your top social media platforms.